I'm Mary Starr with the Wake to Truth podcast. Today, we are very excited to have as our special guest John Guandolo. Many of you are familiar with his work and all that he does, and you may think he doesn't need an introduction, but I'm going to give him one because there could be someone out there that really has not heard him. But his work is incredible and amazing, and I'm very, very thankful to have him with us today. So, John has an extensive background. He attended the Naval Academy, graduated, became an officer in the Marine Corps. From there, he went into work as a special agent for the FBI, and he focused on counterterrorism. And then he went on to the Department of Defense, and in that, he focused on communist and jihadi investigations both in the U.S. and abroad. So he has a tremendous background and wealth of information, and we are happy to have him share that with us today. John, thank you for being with us.
It's great to be on with you, Mary.
Okay, so in addition to all of these other things, since you went out on your own, you left the Department of Defense about 13 years ago, and you've written some books. So two of them are available for sale on your website. One is Islam's Deception, The Truth About Sharia. The other one is Raising a Jihadi Generation, Understanding the Muslim Brotherhood in America. And both of those are very timely topics. And those books are for sale on your website, which is johnguandolo.com. So in addition to that, I've been doing a little research on your website, and you have an amazing treasure trove of articles that you have written. It's just unbelievable. So if you have any interest in doing a deep dive, I would encourage you, as our listeners, go to his website and look at all he has available. His work is extensive. So first, I'd like to start with this Epic City thing. It was announced in 2024, but it seems like it really did not hit the press until 2025. Am I correct about that?
That's right. I mean, the planning for this has been underway for a while inside the Muslim Brotherhood at the national and state level. But right, it hit, I mean, big time just in the recent past, in the last few months.
Right. I'm going to say that I believe there may have been political motivations behind that they hid that as long as they could. Would you agree with that?
You mean, well, there's issues on both sides of the timing of it. But the reality of it is that the citizens at the ground level, and I'm happy to say a lot of them are people that I've trained and my organization have trained, that have been working for several years with local elected officials, local law enforcement, judges, to get them and help them understand the danger of the Islamic movement inside the community. So when this popped up, they were right on top of that. But there still does not seem to be an understanding at the national or state level of the great danger that not only Texas, but the United States is facing.
Well, they announced this, and it's like a 400-acre development, 1,000 residential units, a mosque, a school. And how is this even possible? Because let's start with the fact that having a community that restricts your access to that based on your religion, that's a fundamental violation of our Constitution. So how are they even thinking they're going to do this?
Well, I think they're thinking they're going to do it because for the last 30 plus years in America, our leaders have rolled over and submitted to everything they've asked for. We can go back to the Clinton administration, where you had an Al Qaeda guy, Abdurrahman al-Amoudi, working as his Islamic advisor. And what's that got to do with this topic? It's got everything to do with it. What was the message to the Islamic movement? The most prominent Islamic leader in North America, al-Amoudi, was an Al Qaeda guy. He was the largest fundraiser for Al Qaeda in North America. And he was advising the President of the United States. So how's the FBI and Secret Service vetting? Obviously not good. We come into the Bush administration, And right after 9/11, he tells us that true Islam, some mystical, magical version of Islam, is actually good and peaceful. Meanwhile, on 9/11, he's got Suhail Khan working in the White House, who's the grandson of one of the most prominent Muslim Brotherhood leaders in the history of the Brotherhood in North America, Mahbub Khan. He's inviting in people like Muzamil Siddiqui, arguably the senior leader of the North American Muslim Brotherhood, into his White House, and he's creating foreign policy, warfighting strategy, and counterterrorism strategy based on the input of known Al Qaeda, Hamas, and Al Qaeda guys who wear suits. And tell him he's friendly. And then you can just walk forward through the Obama, uh, Trump, Biden, and now the Trump administration again. Mr. Trump, just made a terrorist, a no BS terrorist, one of the commissioners, an advisor on the U.S. Commission of Religious Liberty. And two other jihadis are on there as well. So it's been a complete catastrophe from a American national security standpoint. If you're the other side, if you're the leaders of the Islamic movement, and at the international level and the national level, um, what would your assessment be? I mean, my assessment would be we can do whatever we want, and as long as we cry Islamophobia, or we shove the First Amendment in their face, or we just say you're being mean, they'll all back down and give us what we want. And so far, it's exactly what our leaders at the local, state. I mean, you got the mayor, John Munns of Plano, who is right there being videoed with the guy Yasser Qadi, who is arguably senior scholar for the Muslim Brotherhood of the United States, Hamas guy, sitting there with him, defending him, and saying people that come against these guys, they're wrong. So that he's aiding and abetting a terrorist organization. I'm sure people would, but again, we don't care. The citizens, most of them don't care. And as long as American citizens tolerate this from their leaders, the Islamic movement is going to continue to gain momentum. And they're at the tail end of everything they've been doing for the last 60 years. So they figure it's over and we've already surrendered. That's their perspective. And I would have to concur with them. I don't see any evidence that's not true.
So, elected officials, for example, the mayor that you mentioned, and I'll even go ahead and throw out there some higher level people like perhaps the governor, do you think they are receiving some compensation to, appear to go along with this?
Well, I don't know that there's a direct quid pro quo. It certainly seems like everyone's acting like it. Um, so there are only a few options. Either all of these leaders are dumb as cinder blocks, they're being blackmailed or being paid off, or they're knowingly and wittingly doing it on their own free accord. And none of those are good.
No.
If you're that dumb and incompetent, you shouldn't be, governor, attorney general, lieutenant governor, comptroller, state legislator, county commissioner, judge, police chief, sheriff. If you don't know what we're talking about, and at this point, it's 2025, it's 24 years after 9/11, you ought to have some clue about what these guys are doing in the United States.
Absolutely. So I'd like to bring up something that you had posted on X, I don't know, a couple of days ago, and it was the tremendous growth of mosques in Germany from many years ago to current, and it was a staggering increase. And they're not the only ones. London has that. Most of the European countries have that issue that they are facing. So I'd like you to speak to that. And I want to emphasize the importance of this is the fact that it's headed our way if we don't do something about it. That is very plain and evident. But anyway, please go ahead and speak to that.
Well, I would say the increase in mosques since 9/11 has been just an exponential jump. Um, we have over about 3,000 mosques in the United States. You've got, and we know as a matter of fact, and evidence and testimony that the majority of them are hostile. We know that all of the prominent Islamic organizations in the United States are hostile. I spoke at the Texas Capitol yesterday, and I asked the audience, can anyone name one national Islamic organization that's not hostile? And it was crickets. And of course, people are thinking there's got to be one, isn't there? And I'm like, well, name one. Let's see. And I haven't found one in my work and my research. And so the question is, if that's true, why are they allowed to operate? Why are they allowed to be nonprofit organizations in the United States? Why aren't they being investigated and shut down, since they're supporting terrorism, many of them, and supporting an identifiable movement, a network that seeks to overthrow the government, to fund terrorism, to kill people, to launder money? I mean, these are normal RICO investigations that we could be conducting, but we're not. So why aren't we? Why isn't DHS, FBI? Why aren't the state police in certain states running investigations on these things? I mean, this is just, it's a level of corruption and unprofessional conduct that I think is staggering, really.
It's very staggering. You read about things like this in other states, like Michigan and other areas like that. You don't think it's going to come home to Texas, but let me tell you what it is. It has. And when it does, it hits you in the face because you're like, that won't happen in Texas, but it's going to if we don't do
Well,
something.
that's right. And I want to remind your audience, let's just look at Texas for a minute. More jihadi attacks in Texas since 9/11 than any other state. The largest Islamic charity in America was housed here in Texas, the Holy Land Foundation for Relief and Development. It was the largest Islamic charity in America, and it was a terrorist organization. So there's two things to recognize. The largest terrorist organization in America was a Hamas organization, was in Richardson, Texas, which is in the DFW area. The largest Islamic organization was a terrorist organization. That's a data point you ought to think about. And the
Wow.
trial where they were convicted, prosecuted and convicted, which was in Northern District of Texas, which is Dallas, this was the largest terrorism financing trial ever successfully prosecuted in American history. The headquarters for Hamas, the terrorist group in the United States, is Chicago. Number 2 hub for Hamas, Dallas, Texas. And my organization rates Houston as the most dangerous city in America as it relates to the density of the communist and jihadi networks there.
Wow.
The combined threat from both is worse in Houston than anywhere else. And there's more, but these are some big nuggets. And Texas is a focus of the Islamic movement. Why? Because they believe if they can take Texas, it's over. And I agree with them. They have targeted other areas. They targeted Nashville, took Nashville well over 10 years ago. They've targeted other areas. They've taken those areas. And now they are focused on Texas. And there's no evidence on the table that demonstrates at a local, state, or federal level that the United States is going to push back. They have
You
no
know,
evidence.
our
So,
mutual, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go
no,
ahead.
that's okay. That's okay.
Our mutual friend Alan West wrote an amazing book several years ago called Hold Texas, Hold the Nation. And it is so spot on and goes exactly along with what you were talking about because it's pivotal. What happens here is pivotal for America.
Yeah. And I want to really encourage um, Texans, Americans in general, but really Texans. This idea, somebody asked me the other day, so what are we, 5 or 10 years behind Europe? Absolutely not. We're maybe a year behind Europe, um, maybe a little more, but I think you're going to see violence in the United States soon. We were actually, intelligence was pointing towards violence on May 1st, May Day, coming from primarily the communists in the United States. But they don't operate at the local level without the jihadis. They all actually operate seamlessly at the ground level. So we expected that. All the indicators were there. They pulled back for a number of reasons, and we're still analyzing that. But they are assessing when to go violent. It's not a matter of whether or not they will. It's when will be the right time. And again, with Mr. Trump recently kind of completely submitting to some of the largest terrorism funding nations in the world, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and appointing, as I said earlier, jihadis, terrorists to the U.S. Committee on Religious Liberty, they just feel like there's a debate inside the Islamic movement. Like, we don't need to go violent yet. We're going to go violent, but not yet, because they're giving us, under Trump, they're giving us everything we're pushing for. So this is where we are. It's ugly. And as I've told citizens before, none of this will change until citizens change it. The reason, I spend very little time these days briefing at the national level, briefing at the state level, because it's a waste of time. They are not going to do anything. Your governor's not going to, I don't care what state you're in, your governor's not going to do anything. Your legislatures certainly aren't going to do anything. They're too busy kissing the fannies of the jihadis and the communists. If people at the county level, and this is what I do now for a living, we train them how to organize, how to identify these hostile networks and individuals at the local level, how to form your team, and how to lawfully flush them out of the county while reestablishing, America's founding principles at the local level. That's how we're going to win. And in areas where we can get 4 or 5 counties adjacent to one another to do that, now you've got a foothold in a state to start pushing back out and taking your state back. And it's being done in areas where we've spent a lot of time. But, this needs to be scaled out to a national level. We're in a war against an Islamic movement and a communist movement. And these movements, capital M, this is war. These movements have published doctrine, published strategies, hundreds of lines of operation, networks that include thousands of organizations, and they are acting daily to advance their movement. And for 30 years, the United States has had zero strategic response. We've had some tactical wins, but we lost, did we not? We lost in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Africa, where we were fighting, we lost. And it wasn't because the military on the ground weren't killing enough of them, although we weren't, but we were certainly crushing them on the battlefield. But it's because our leaders failed to do the most basic thing that they're supposed to do, which is identify the enemy. If we're going to wage war, who's the enemy? And since 9/11 to today, to right now, nobody has actually identified the enemy. Well, that's unprofessional. It's catastrophic failure by our leaders. And the American people just keep taking it. But the American people are clearly starting to get angry. And I think they're about 10, 15 years too late. But maybe it's a good start. Maybe we can turn this around.
Well, we all would certainly hope so. You have already answered one of the questions I was going to ask, but I'll still bring it up. So, Governor Abbott says that he has, he shut this down. He made a big statement about that on some local news channel not long ago. Let me guess that that's probably not exactly accurate.
So, some of the things that the Attorney General and the Governor have done are good. I'm not going to take that away from them. When we investigate these terrorist networks, these jihadi networks, there are many ways to deal with them. We put guys away for mail fraud. We put people away for money laundering. If we know they're terrorists, anything where we can stack the maximum amount of charges against them and get them off the streets, that's helpful. But this is a war, and the war is, as the former chief prosecutor for the counterterrorism division in New York, Andrew McCarthy, said, this war cannot be won in the courts. The Holy Land Foundation trial took 7 years. 7 years. And that's one organization, and they have thousands. We have to shut them down. We have to shut the network down. And the longer we've waited, there's going to come a time where the only option is brute force. And that's not where we want to get to. I've just shared with somebody at lunch today. I had a business meeting today. Of a 2007, I'm sitting there talking to the assistant director of the FBI's Washington field office. And I said, what are we going to do when the citizens understand that that mosque in their community is run by Al Qaeda? And instead of bulldozing it, arresting the leaders, seizing it, seizing the money, our leadership is having lunch with their leadership. What do you think the citizens are going to do? And more importantly, what are we going to do if citizens decide to take physical action, kinetic, like they go violent, because they're like, well, we don't want Al Qaeda in our neighborhood. Thank you. And since you're not going to do anything, and the state police and local police aren't doing anything, we're going to do something. And my question to her was, are we going to side with Al Qaeda and Hamas against the citizens, or are we going to stand behind the citizens and finally shut this terrorist mosque down? And she looked like a deer in the headlights. She said, well, I've never thought about that. Like, this is what we talk about every day. Because the citizens in America, they're smart. They'll do their homework eventually. And when they do, and when they realize how the government is betraying them, our leadership, the FBI leadership's betraying them, the presidents, the national security advisors, secretaries of state and treasury and defense are betraying them, and many governors and many state police chiefs and many state DPS and DHS commissioners and many police chiefs and sheriffs, because they'd rather get along than they would abide by their oath of office. And this is where we are now. We're getting kicked in the teeth. If you want to know why, Yasser Qadi, who is the chairman of the Fiqh Council of North America, the most prominent Muslim Brotherhood organization, Hamas organization in North America for Islamic jurisprudence. And he's the chairman, and he's the face of Epic City. He's the guy Mayor Buns of Plano is committing treason over, by kissing his butt and telling everyone, this is our friend. He's here to love us. No, he's not. He's here to wage jihad. And it reminds me of the locals who turned Jews in to the local constable who ended up working for the SS during World War II. That's Mayor John Buns. He's just selling us out to the enemy. And we keep talking about it as if this is business as usual. This is not business as usual. These people in our communities, they're our enemies. They're siding with the enemies. And I just want to give this analogy so your viewers understand. If Mayor John Buns is standing in the enemy camp and he's just holding on to this thing and letting go of it, and he makes the argument, well, I didn't know that's what was going on. I didn't know that was a mortar. And I didn't know if I let go, it went in the tube and then it fired. And then I didn't know it was aimed at your position, John. It doesn't matter. You're still putting rounds on my house. And that's what he's doing. That's what all these people are doing that are defending the Islamic movement, that are defending these Islamic leaders. These are no different. These are suit-wearing Osama bin Ladens. That's what they are. The same people that raped and burned babies, that's these guys in suits. I mean, heck yeah, the ISIS commander took off his garb and put on a suit. He's now the president of Syria. I mean, these people are barbaric. They have no place in civilized society. And it is astonishing that so few pastors, mayors, police chiefs, sheriffs, presidents, they can't raise the courage up inside them to speak the truth about it. And if they're ignorant about it, then they have no business being police chief, sheriff, mayor, legislator, president, etc.
So what I'm hearing you say is they have two choices. They can either be complicit or they can be pretty uninformed, and both are bad.
What was the last part you said?
I said they can either be complicit or they can be completely uninformed. Either way you go, they have two choices, and those are both bad.
Yeah, neither one's good. That's exactly right. Or they could speak the truth. There's another wild idea. They could actually speak truth about these things.
That's a very novel concept, but I think that America is poised for that because of what we saw last year in our November 5th election. Because we saw people leaving the Democrat Party because they realized how they had been lied to and used for so many years. And they're like, wow. And we had no idea. And then they finally started seeing the truth. And if we can have that same thing occur as it relates to the Islamic the influx and the efforts they are making to establish communities like this, if that will happen in America, then we can win against this threat.
Well, I agree, but it's got to start at the local level. It would be nice to have some help at the federal level, but that appears to be not happening. Um, and so that again, that's why I spend the bulk of my time um, during the work week and the weekends training communities how to identify these hostile networks at the local county level, how to identify the organizations and individuals that are part of the communist and Islamic movement, and how to identify people that are collaborating with them, supporting them, financing them, that are not necessarily ideologically aligned with either communism or Islam, and um, and how to flush them lawfully out of the community. There's so many ways, and sure, we tell people you're limited by your experience, your training, and your creativity. I mean, we have seen communities across the nation that we've trained use very creative ways to basically screw with the bad guys and to force them out of their communities. And there are infinite number of ways to do it, but we kind of give you the template how to do it and a lot of ideas how to do it. And I think that's the key. It's from local level out.
I totally agree with you. So, for the benefit of our audience, can you please elaborate on your organization and where all of you operate? Um, just tell us about your organization.
Yeah. So what we primarily do now more than anything, we still, if someone, like we get calls from state DPS, state police. Um, I still talk to people privately that are in the Trump administration, uh, but nobody whose job it is in national security to deal with this has any clue about this, and that's the problem. Um, and the people that I know that do aren't in those areas, and they don't have access to actually do anything about it. We're continuing to work on it. It's pretty disappointing to see what the Trump administration is doing with regards to the jihadi threat. They just every day, every week, they keep promoting jihadis and terrorists into the Trump administration. And at some point, you have to ask yourself, how long are we going to give Mr. Trump a pass? We can't just blame his advisors. He's ultimately responsible. If an aircraft carrier runs aground at 3 a.m. while the captain's sleeping in his bed, the captain gets relieved of his command. That's how it works. And so Mr. Trump is accountable for what his administration does and fails to do. And one or two times, okay, maybe it slipped through, but a dozen times or more that you've promoted jihadis and then stood there and sang their praises publicly. Um, I don't know what to make of that, other than gross negligence, ignorance. Uh, I would argue criminal negligence if we can demonstrate people are dead because these people and people are dead. Actually, Randall Royer getting promoted to the U.S. Commission on Liberty. I mean, he's been overseas fighting. He's killed people. So that's the guy we think we need to use to help us understand religious liberty. I mean, it's so divorced from logic, reason, and any strategic value. But there is no strategy to defeat these two movements in the United States in the Trump administration. I mean, we published ours 12 years ago, um, but and it's been presented to people who had access to the Trump administration. So at some point, you got to believe nobody wants it fixed, and I do believe that. I don't believe the Trump administration wants it fixed. I don't see any evidence of that. Um, they're looking at the trees, but they can't see the forest. I think
So do you believe that the people involved in the vetting process for the Trump administration, do you think that they are compromised, or do you think that they are just not doing their due diligence?
so. I don't believe there is any vetting. First of all, there is no evidence to me there's any vetting, and I've been personally involved in a couple incidents, like when the Hezbollah guy Imam Husseini was invited to the Trump inauguration. Um, and I wasn't the first one to bring it out, but I was one of the first couple to put it out on social media. And I got a call um, by someone with direct access to the chief of staff who said, um, "Can you give me a few bullet points?" And I did. And then I got a call back very quickly saying, they were freaking out. I'm like, okay, they're freaking out. So what are they going to do about it? Who did they figure out who allowed that? Who chose that person? And are they fired? And well, who chose them? Well, Rick Grinnell did. Masood Bolos did. Tiffany Trump's father-in-law. These are the two, when you ask, those are the two people pushing the jihadis into the Trump camp. You got Rabul Chowdhury, who may have traveled with Mr. Trump to Qatar, because he put out on his social media he was in Qatar at the same time Mr. Trump was. And there are pictures of him with Mr. Trump because he's the guy that created the organization um, uh, Muslims for Trump. So that, this is where we are. And he's a Hamas guy. So at some point, you've got to recognize there's some real problems inside the Trump camp, and we have to decide what we're going to do about that. Excuse me.
Yeah, that's definitely concerning because we didn't expect that and we didn't vote for that.
No, we didn't. We voted for him to clean house, not to open up, not all the work that Tom Homan is doing, and not just Tom Homan, really a bulk of the administration to shut down the border and find the millions of illegals here in the country and get them out for starters. That's all important work. The stuff Mr. Trump is doing to shore up our financial and our business community, vitally important. The things he's doing in the Department of Defense to clean out communists and people that are, I guess the softest way to say it is jihadi lovers inside the State Department, the Treasury Department, the Defense Department, to reestablish. He's doing all that is good. But here's one thing I want to encourage your viewers to really consider. This, and I'm glad Stephen Miller said it last week. It's getting a lot clearer from some people. We're in a war. We are in a war. And the adversaries is the communist movement, the Islamic movement, their collaborators and financiers. Because at the ground level in America, that's where the rubber hits the road. That's who's doing it. That's who's getting the job done. The communists and jihadis, primarily through interfaith outreach and other things like that. But here's the point. No war in history has ever been won by fixing policies or changing issues. Wars are won by identifying and vanquishing the enemy. That's it. And not only are we not identifying the enemy, we're promoting them to positions inside the U.S. government, just like Clinton did, just like Mr. Bush did, just like Obama did, just like Mr. Trump did the first time, just like Mr. Biden did, and now he's doing it again. And it's Mr. Trump actually did a pretty decent job in his first term of pushing back against these guys. And it's like, I don't know what they did to him, but it's working. And they're eating his lunch, and he thinks he's cleaning house with them. I mean, it's pretty shocking to watch.
It's very disturbing because I think we all expected much more. I guess action is a good word. We'll just go with action in regard to things like that from him. And
Right.
like you say, he's done a good job in many areas, but this is an area that needs immediate and very firm attention. And
Right.
from what you're saying, it's not happening.
No.
Okay. What else would you like to add?
I think the couple things I'd like to add, maybe in summarizing this, is uh, I want to reiterate. It's all about Sharia. Everything the Islamic movement is doing is all about Sharia. Everything the communists doing is all about communism. We can't. These people aren't progressives. They're not liberals. They're communists. We need to call them what they are. Kamala Harris isn't a wackadoodle. She's a communist. AOC, Joe Biden, Barack Obama. These people, the communists and the Islamic movements, are working together. And they're working together at the international level, the national level, the state level, and down to the local level, at the ground level. And these networks are inside our communities. I cannot reiterate that enough. The last thing I think is really important, besides what I just said, that if you don't understand Sharia, you don't understand this war. And deception is at the core of the Islamic Quranic concept of war. Deception. And the easiest way to explain this, there's two pieces to this. First, in Islamic law, in Sharia, it's a capital crime for a Muslim to teach another Muslim anything about Islam that's not true. It's part of the law of apostasy. And apostasy, says right there, anyone that commits apostasy deserves to die. That's the lingo. That's the exact verbiage in Islamic law. So a Muslim can't teach a Muslim child in an Islamic school anything about Islam that's not true. So if you want to buy a book to understand Islam, you can't go to a bookstore and buy it. You have to go to a mosque bookstore and buy a book of Islamic law, because that's intended for an Islamic audience. In Islamic law, it is obligatory for Muslims to lie to non-Muslims if it advances Islam. And the practical example for anyone that wants to push back, how is it that what they teach, and I've read, if not hundreds, many dozens of textbooks from around the world to teach 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds about Islam, and I use a couple to teach with. How is it that what Muslims use to teach their 10-year-old children says things about Islam that are basic principles in Islam that is exactly opposite of what Islamic leaders tell U.S. leaders, local, state, federal? It's exactly opposite. How is that? So someone's being lied to. And knowing what we know about what Sharia requires, it's pretty easy to figure out who's being lied to. Because the most prominent, most well-used textbook for 12-year-olds in U.S. Islamic schools says on the first page, Islam's not a religion, it's a complete way of life. The duty of Muslims is to be loyal to the Islamic State. One of the three duties of all Muslims is to wage jihad, and that anyone who dies in jihad automatically goes to paradise. I mean, these are normative things that are taught to Muslim children. So when people say, wow, why'd this young boy who went to this school, how could he have gone and shot all these people? Well, why wouldn't he? He went to Orlando to a club that's filled with homosexuals and killed them, because that's what Islam says the penalty is for being homosexual. What I don't understand the confusion in your mind. Oh, I see the confusion, because the propaganda from the Islamic organization says that's not true Islam. So here's the question. Where is this magical version of Islam taught? And I always ask, can anyone name one book of Islamic law or one textbook used to teach Muslims about Islam with this magical version of Islam that says, love thy neighbor, peace, not just real peace, nonviolence, and care for your neighbor, and love your enemy, love Christians, love Jews, love Hindus. Where's that version? It's not taught anywhere, because it's not Islam. It's not even close to Islam. Islam's barbaric. It has no place in civilized society, and it hasn't changed since 622. So not really sure what it is we're talking about other than people that are either ignorant or liars propagating a lie about Islam. And it's high time, I think, that we start calling these people out publicly.
Definitely. Well, it's the spirit of deception that has allowed America to receive so much wrong information. This is yet one more example of that.
That's right. And it's the same. It's the same. I mean, you look at whether it's food and diet, whether it's about COVID or COVID vaccines, whether it's about, Russiagate, I mean, my goodness. I mean, at what level do we realize it? What haven't we been lied to about? And Islam is just another one. So if you're part of a church and the pastor says true Islam is actually peaceful, I'd run away from that church because that guy is a liar. And it's worth recognizing that if you're a liar, well, maybe you shouldn't be leading a flock. Just my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. It's like, if that is said in the church you're in, I would suggest you pack up and leave, find another church.
I mean, I'd certainly try to fire that guy first or drag him out and throw him out the front door and maybe not leave, maybe stay and fight for the truth. But one way or the other, the truth needs to be defended, even when it's uncomfortable.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I
was just going to say, if anybody, if anybody would like to, consider this training, you can go to johnguandolo.com and contact me there. And I would just say, really what we're talking about, I just feel like it is time that we put freedom back on the offensive where it belongs, and we stop waiting for the cavalry to come over the hill. There's no cavalry coming.
No, there's not.
Americans
we have to take
involved and engaged.
We have got to look out for ourselves. We have to be prepared, and
that's right.
Prepared in many different ways. You brought some very eye-opening information today that I hope our listeners will take to heart because it's 100% truth.
Yep. Thank you very much.
John, this has been incredible. I thank you. And I have some ideas. I'd like to invite you back to podcast again. And
right. Would love to do it.
That'd be great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Bless you.
Thanks for watching the Awake to Truth podcast. Visit our website at awaketotruth.org and connect with Mary Starr on X at awaketotruth_ and on Rumble at Awake to Truth Ministries. The Awake to Truth podcast, a beacon of hope in a world shrouded by shadows.